Hi and welcome back to Copic in the Craft Room. Michelle Houghton here, and I'm going to be playing with a couple stamps from Dare to Be Artsy today and a die cut. The art set, I'm just using the sentiment, and then the die cut I am using kind of the main panel. There's 3 separate pieces. I'm using the main panel and I'm using the little leaf section that I'm putting my sentiment on. So I have die cut that out of white cardstock, pretty simple and straightforward. I'm going to set that to the side for now, and then I'm going to create something that's going to go behind that die cut. So I'm going to start with some vellum and some colorless blender and a mister and just some of my Copic markers. I wasn't totally sure what I was going to do with this, but I think I've got something that's going to work. So I'm starting with a YG01, and I'm truly just scribbling this onto the vellum. Now it's going to look different. It doesn't absorb into the paper. It kind of sits on top because it's vellum. You could do the same technique on like a tracing paper. That would work really well. Excuse me. And then I've got a YG09 that I'm coming in, and notice I'm coloring right beside those colors. I'm doing some overlapping, and really they're not mixing very much. Again, the vellum is going to react very differently. It sits kind of separately, and you can see it's real wet. You're not going to get the smooth coloring that you do on cardstock. This is YG67, filling in some more of those gaps, and I'm just doing a big space. I'm nothing in particular, just trying to fill the area. And add one more color. Notice these are all pretty extreme in their contrast. They are from some of the same color family. This is actually the Y28. Some are not. Obviously a yellow and a yellow-green. Some 2 from the 0 family and 1 from the 6 in those yellow-greens. But very different, and purposefully so. I want them to show up differently. I'm not trying to blend them together. And I'm scribbling off some of that green, got a little bit on that yellow marker. Misting with colorless blender. The mister itself doesn't matter. I'm just spraying colorless blender on here. Really not that much. It's just trying to get the whole surface wet. And then I'm blowing on it. My head kind of gets in the way of the camera because I'm trying to get close to it and blow it. I don't have to do this super quick, but I want to keep it moving while it's wet. You can kind of see it's still very wet. Moving those around a little bit. And then I'm taking a peek at what that's going to look like when I put the die cut over it. But you can kind of see what I'm going for. I'm making that window, almost stained glass window effect, but this time in white. And it's looking pretty much like I want it to. Now on the vellum, it's going to take a while to dry. So I tuck that to the side. I've stamped this little sentiment, just the be yourself, onto that leaf. We're going to get close and color that up. So YG01 is what I'm starting with, and I'm filling that whole leaf in with YG01. I realized pretty quick that to get those edges, because this is already pre-cut, I'm going to need something else underneath because I am definitely going to go off the edges. So I get a piece of scrap paper that I know I can get messy and not worry about. It's still pretty much clean underneath the leaf. Going over those areas at least 2 or 3 times to get that nice even coverage. Then I'm coming back in with YG03. Now notice this one is part of a natural blending group. So these are going to blend well together. I'm working on that cardstock this time. This happens to be Express It blending card. YG07 is next, and I'm hitting some of those edges. A little bit heavier at the bottom to give some weight to that bottom corner and the bottom edge. I'm not trying to shade it like a leaf, just trying to give it some value difference. Going back to YG03, kind of flicking from that dark into the light. Some small circles along that edge and some flicks pulling that color in. And then YG01, mostly circling right at that edge to soften that edge as well. And then I'm going to do some cutting. I'm going to cut my card base out of a cardstock, kind of a standard size card base, and folding that in half. And then I'm going to measure that die cut. You're going to see me kind of do some measuring because I want that to fit exactly on top. I don't want things hanging out, so I'm measuring the die cut itself. And then I'm going to come in and trim my vellum to exactly the same size. Trying to keep mostly just color in there. It curled a little bit as it dried, but I know because of the way I'm going to lay that on top of the die cut on top of the vellum, that part's not going to matter. So trimming those edges down. And I like the look on top of the craft, but it doesn't allow those colors to really pop. So I grab another sheet of white cardstock. I like that a lot better. So I grab another sheet of white cardstock and I'm going to trim that to the exact same size as well, so that it can all kind of sit on top of that craft and really still pop. So I'm going to trim that part down, again the same size as the die cut, so it looks like it's all kind of one piece. I'm going to attach each piece, kind of stack them up and try to line them up as best as possible. This technique really lends itself to quick, simple cards. This is something I could do if I did all my die cuts at the same time and kind of did an assembly line process. I could whip out a huge amount of these cards kind of all at once in a pretty short amount of time, which is really nice with this particular technique, and really fast and easy. On the vellum, I'm actually running tape all the way along both edges. I know that sometimes, obviously, vellum, you're going to see some of those adhesives underneath, but because I'm going to put that die cut frame on top of it, I'm not super worried about the adhesive showing. So I'm literally running it all the way across those long edges, and then I'm trimming it down so it's exactly to the edge. Kind of trying to keep it nice and clean, if nothing else. And that's just a double-sided tape from Express It. And then adhering that so it's nice and smooth, and then the die cut is going to go on top of that. So for that, because those die cut little pieces are pretty small, I'm going to use a glue pen. I am going to use a little bit of tape underneath that leaf because it's heavier and it can use a little bit more oomph to hold it down, and then I'm going to use just a glue pen to get those corners and edges glued down really well. So I'm going around that outer edge to get that stuck down to that card base really well. And lining that up nice and tight. And then to finish off, got one more step, got that little leaf, and we're going to pop that up with some foam squares. You know me, I like a good foam square, adding some height. Lovely. And I keep it simple. That's really going to be it for this particular card. I sure appreciate you joining me this week at Copic in the Craft Room. If you haven't had a chance, please take a second to follow our channel and like this video, and check us out over at Facebook on Copic in the Craft Room for all sorts of Copic inspiration. Have a happy, colorful week.